Well, alcohol, like so many other parts of American culture, it was always sort of at war with itself in the American character. Americans, particularly Southerners, like to tell themselves that this has always been the Bible Belt. Alcohol has never played much of a role here, but the truth is, it has always been very popular in every region of the country. It was very popular in the South as well. Bourbon whiskey, Scotch whiskey, I mean, those are really uniquely, bourbon particularly is a uniquely American drink that comes out of the American South. I mean, it comes out of Kentucky. And particularly after the Civil War, Americans, Southerners, are making a lot of money off of bourbon. It's being exported around the world. But at the same time, you see the rise of the Temperance Movement. There is a recognition in American society that alcohol can also be an evil, that the abuse of alcohol can lead to all sorts of bad things, as we know today, breakdown of family, loss of job, all sorts of things. It was very little understood at that time as to whether or not it was a moral weakness or whether it was a disease. But the temperance movement is really on the rise in America around 1900. Right? It's no accident that Prohibition comes around in 1918. At the same time, Americans love their alcohol, and at no point during Prohibition did they stop drinking. This is when we see the rise of organized crime. It became very lucrative to sell booze on the sly. So alcohol has been such an integral part of American history long before there was in America. From the time the first colonists got here, one of the first things they did was distill alcohol and make some form of whiskey. They drank beer. They imported wine. Why? Because you couldn't drink the water. It was almost impossible to find a clean water source in any place in colonial America. It was much safer to drink alcohol. And so from the beginning, Americans have loved alcohol. They drink it, they sell it, they export it, they import it. They make laws against it because they somehow understand it's not a good thing, but at the same time, they can't stop doing it. I mean, it's quintessentially American, right? The minute that Prohibition ends, this becomes a taxable thing. Millions are raised off of it, are still raised off of it. The state of Kentucky alone pays, the bourbon industry alone still pays billions in ad valorem taxes. So it has always been a way to make money. It's also after Prohibition that you see the rise of the cocktail in American life. Bars like this one, where drinking becomes not so much something you do all day to sustain yourself through a long, hard day, which colonial Americans would have done. It becomes a way to relax. Americans have more leisure time when they get together to socialize. I mean, that's something people have always done since time immemorial, to relax with friends over a drink. But it becomes really part of the American ethos, if you will, especially after World War II. You've got more affluence, you've got people driving, you see the rise of the martini lunch. This is something that our forefathers, I think, in the colonial period would not have recognized. What's a Manhattan? What's an old-fashioned? They might have recognized a toddy of some kind, but a Manhattan is a drink that speaks, a martini is a drink that speaks of something else, some sort of a special class, a special status. There's something about it. H.L. Mencken said it is the most perfect thing Americans have ever produced outside the sonnet, is the martini. And how can you disagree with that? I think alcohol, we all know, plays a very special role in Savannah. And I don't know that you understand that so much until you go somewhere else and you realize that in other places it's really not that important. Suburbia America, it probably is not that way. But in a town like this that has history, conviviality, prides itself on hospitality, it prides itself on sociability. Drinking is really part of the way of life here. Like everything else in every culture, overindulgence is frowned upon, but getting together with friends at a place like this is really, it harkens back to the days of the coffee house in colonial America. I mean, there is something almost in our DNA as Americans about this kind of establishment. It goes back to Europe with the ale houses and the taverns, but it really has become an important part of the fabric of this part of the country.